Jordan had always believed that transformation would feel glorious, like a cinematic shift where the world suddenly snapped into focus and everything made sense, but the truth was much quieter and much darker. Change didn't announce itself with fanfare. It crept in slowly like a shadow stretching across the floor inch by inch until you realized the room was different than before. On the morning everything truly began, Jordan woke with the feeling of being watched by their own life, as if the decisions they had avoided for years were standing at the edge of their bed demanding answers. The room felt cold, too still, too heavy, like the air itself was waiting. Jordan pushed the blanket aside and sat up, elbows on their knees, palms pressed to their face. Their breath came unevenly as though their lungs were negotiating the terms of their own surrender. They scanned the room. Clothes draped over a chair, unread books stacked in uneven piles, a half-finished cup of cold coffee on the nightstand. It all looked like evidence of someone trying and failing at the same time, someone caught between intention and direction, between desire and exhaustion. Their phone buzzed. Jordan didn't move. They already knew who it would be. Another message reminding them of something overdue, something forgotten, something abandoned halfway because their mind had slipped again into chaos. For months, their life had been unraveling silently, thread by thread, until they were tangled in knots they no longer knew how to undo. Eventually, they reached for the phone and glanced at the screen. Another deadline. Another missed responsibility, another reminder that the world didn't pause for anyone drowning internally. Jordan set the phone down gently, breathing out a long, shaking exhale. It felt like their chest had become a cage, and every anxious thought was a metal bar welded shut around their ribs. They knew they were capable. Everyone had told them that since childhood. But capability meant nothing when their focus shattered every time they tried to build something meaningful. They stood slowly, stretching limbs stiff from restless sleep, and walked to the small mirror hanging near the closet. Their reflection startled them, not because they looked different, but because they finally saw what had been hiding in plain sight. The exhaustion behind the eyes, the constant flicker of fear, the tension embedded into every subtle movement. They traced a finger under their eye and whispered something they'd never said aloud. "I don't know who I'm becoming." The truth tasted bitter. They weren't becoming anything. They were fading, one unmade decision at a time. They grabbed a hoodie, pulled it on, and walked into the kitchen, where a draft seeped in from the cracked window. The world outside was colorless, washed in the dim, early morning gray that made everything look colder. Jordan poured water into a glass, staring blankly through it as if searching for answers at the bottom. Their mind felt like an overcrowded room. Voices, expectations, memories, failures, all shouting at once, demanding attention. They closed their eyes and tried to breathe. In, out, in, out. But the weight in their lungs didn't lift. It rarely did anymore. They leaned on the counter, letting the cool surface ground them, if only for a moment. Then, unexpectedly, the phone buzzed again, but this time the vibration felt different, like it carried a weight that demanded their attention. Jordan unlocked the screen, a message from a name they hadn't seen in years. Marcellus. Their stomach tightened instantly. Marcellus wasn't someone who appeared casually. He was a figure carved out of discipline and fire, a mentor whose presence alone had once forced Jordan to confront the parts of themselves they preferred to ignore. Jordan had drifted far from that discipline, far from that version of themselves, and part of them feared what Marcellus remembered. The message was short. "You're slipping again, aren't you?" Jordan's breath caught in their throat. How did he know? Why now? Jordan typed, deleted, typed again, then stopped. They didn't know what to say. Another message arrived before they could attempt to reply. "Meet me tonight, warehouse, midnight." No explanation, no kindness, no softening, Just a summons from the one person who never allowed excuses to exist in his orbit. Jordan stared at the message, pulse quickening. A part of them wanted to ignore it, pretend they never saw it, continue spiraling quietly, but another part, the part buried under fear, fog, and fatigue, stirred awake, small but fierce like an ember glowing under a pile of ashes. They finally whispered to the empty kitchen, "Maybe this is my chance." The words trembled, but they were real. And once spoken, they could not be taken back. The day crawled by with a strange heaviness, as if every hour was stretching itself out to test Jordan's patience. They tried to distract themselves, cleaning, pacing, attempting to read, but their thoughts kept circling back to Marcellus's message. Why now? Why after all this time? There was a part of Jordan that feared he would simply look at them and see failure wearing skin. Another part feared he wouldn't look at them at all, that he'd turn away disappointed, confirming everything Jordan believed about their decline. As the sun fell and the sky began its descent into twilight, Jordan felt each minute tighten around them like a noose. They didn't know if they were walking toward salvation or another collapse, but something inside them insisted, quiet, stern, that they needed to go. By the time night fully arrived, the world outside had transformed into a canvas of deep blues and silent shadows. The moon hung low, pale and distant, and the air carried the kind of chill that made the skin tense. Jordan stood in front of the mirror once more before leaving, studying their reflection with an expression somewhere between fear and resolve. They straightened their shoulders, though their body still trembled, and whispered to themselves, "Don't turn back this time." It felt like a promise, not to Marcellus, not to anyone else, but to the fractured pieces inside them, begging to be held together. The drive to the warehouse was quiet and tense. The roads were nearly empty, the streetlights flickering across the pavement like weak pulses. Jordan gripped the steering wheel, feeling sweat bead along their palms even as the car heater hummed. The closer they got, the more their thoughts tangled. What if Marcellus didn't believe in them anymore? What if he regretted contacting them? What if this meeting only confirmed that Jordan had wasted the last few years drifting in uncertainty? They tried to breathe through the fear, but their heart kept pushing against their ribs like it wanted to escape. When the warehouse finally appeared on the horizon, it didn't look any less intimidating than Jordan remembered. A massive dark structure framed against the night sky like a sleeping giant. Its silhouette was harsh, its edges sharp, its presence almost confrontational. Jordan parked near the entrance and sat in silence for a moment, gripping the keys so tightly that their knuckles whitened. They forced themselves to inhale deeply, though it felt like they were dragging air through a straw, and whispered, "Go." The warehouse door creaked open with a low, metallic groan as Jordan stepped inside. The interior was dimly lit, the air cool and thick with the scent of dust, metal, and something else, something like memory. Shadows stretched across the concrete floor in long, uneven streaks, and old equipment stood like forgotten monuments along the walls. Jordan's eyes adjusted slowly, and then they saw him. Marcellus stood in the center of the room, arms crossed, posture unyielding. His presence filled the space even in silence. His sharp gaze cut through the dim light like a blade, landing on Jordan with an intensity that made their heartbeats stumble. He didn't speak at first. He didn't have to. His eyes scanned Jordan the way surgeons scan broken bones, searching, assessing, weighing. Jordan felt exposed under that gaze, as though every failure, every misstep, every crack in their armor was being illuminated. After a long, suffocating pause, Marcellus finally said, "You look worse than I expected." His tone was blunt, not cruel, but it pierced all the same. Jordan swallowed hard. "Thanks," they muttered weakly. A corner of Marcellus's mouth twitched, not quite amusement, but something close. "You're angry," he said. Jordan shook their head. "I'm not. then you're lying. The way he said it wasn't accusatory. It was simply true. Jordan opened their mouth to argue, then closed it again, frustrated by how easily Marcellus could still read them. He stepped closer, boots echoing against the concrete. "You're tired," he added. "Not the kind of tired you sleep off. The kind of tired that comes from fighting yourself every day." Jordan lowered their gaze. That description hit too precisely. Mark Ellis walked around them slowly, his steps deliberate. "You've let your attention scatter. You've let your emotions lead. You've let every worry drain you until you don't even know what's left." Jordan exhaled shakily, feeling their throat tighten. Hearing the truth spoken aloud made it sharper somehow, more undeniable. "You're not weak," Marcellus said. "You're unfocused." He stopped in front of them. "And that's something I can fix if you're willing." Jordan felt something inside them flicker, like a match trying to catch flame. "I don't know if I can handle it," they admitted. The vulnerability stung the moment it left their mouth. Marcellus tilted his head. "Handling it isn't the point. Choosing it is." He gestured toward a worn wooden chair in the corner. "Sit." Jordan hesitated, then obeyed. Marcellus grabbed an old metal timer and set it on the table beside them. Jordan watched him, heartbeat thumping. "This is the beginning," he said. "Tonight, you learn stillness." Jordan stared at the timer as Marcellus twisted the dial, the metal clicking loudly in the otherwise silent warehouse. The sound echoed through the room, sharp and rhythmic, almost like a countdown to something Jordan couldn't quite comprehend. Marcellus stepped back, folding his arms across his chest. 10 minutes, he said. "You sit still. No movement, no fidgeting, no checking the time, no giving in to whatever chaos starts screaming in your mind. You will breathe, and you will stay." Jordan felt their chest tighten. 10 minutes didn't sound long, but the weight in Marcellus's voice suggested otherwise. They took a deep breath as he pressed the timer switch. It began ticking immediately, steady, unhurried, merciless. At first, Jordan felt fine. Their shoulders relaxed slightly, their hands rested in their lap, their breathing even. But barely a minute passed before the discomfort began creeping in. An itch on their arm, a tightness in their back, a sudden desire to shift their legs. Each urge tugged at them like invisible strings. Jordan forced themselves to stay still. But the physical discomfort was nothing compared to the mental noise that surged in like a storm. Memories, regrets, fears, a flood of unfinished conversations, unspoken words, old wounds, and anxieties Jordan thought they had buried long ago, all of them demanding space. Their heartbeat picked up. Their breath wavered. Their throat tightened the way it always did when panic threatened to rise. A dozen thoughts pushed for dominance. What if I can't do this? What if I fail again? What if Marcellus sees that I haven't changed at all? What if this is a mistake? Jordan clenched their jaw, resisting the urge to stand up, to walk away, to escape, the pressure building inside their chest. They shut their eyes and focused on breathing. Slow, steady, deliberate. But their mind kept drifting to the things they feared most about themselves. Marcellus's voice cut through the chaos, not loud, not harsh, but sharp enough to slice through the noise. "That is your mind trying to run," he said. "It always runs. This is why you're exhausted. You never make it stay." Jordan swallowed hard. Sweat gathered at their temples. Their fingers twitched instinctively, but they forced them still. A shiver ran down their spine. Time dragged. Seconds felt like minutes, minutes like hours. The ticking timer felt like a taunt, each click reminding them how much further they had to go. At some point, Jordan didn't know when, the noise shifted. It didn't disappear, but it rearranged itself. Instead of a storm, it became waves. Still loud, still overwhelming, but rhythmic, predictable. Jordan focused on their breathing again, in, out, in, out. Their heartbeat steadied slightly, no longer pounding like a trapped animal, but pulsing with slow determination. A strange warmth spread through their chest, not comfort exactly, but a sense of presence. For the first time in a long time, Jordan wasn't running. They weren't pushing away their thoughts or drowning in their emotions. They were simply there. When the timer finally rang, the sound jolted Jordan back into reality. They inhaled sharply, eyes opening to the dim warehouse light. Their body felt stiff, their muscles aching, but something inside them felt different, gentler, grounded, as though they had discovered a small piece of themselves hidden beneath the noise. Marcellus approached, studying them closely. "Harder than you thought, isn't it?" Jordan nodded weakly. "A lot harder." Marcellus crouched down beside them, resting his elbows on his knees. "That fight you just felt," he said, "wasn't with me. It wasn't with the clock. It was with you. The version of you that refuses to be quiet, refuses to let go, refuses to listen." Jordan looked at him, still catching their breath. "I didn't know it was that bad," they whispered. Marcellus shook his head. "It's not bad. It's untrained. You've spent years reacting to everything, letting your thoughts drag you wherever they want. But stillness is where strength begins, control begins, and right now, you are relearning what control feels like." Jordan absorbed the words, feeling their weight. The ache in their limbs lingered, but so did a strange sense of victory. Small, fragile, but real. Marcellus stood and extended a hand. Jordan took it, letting him pull them to their feet. "Go home," he said. "Rest. Tonight was only the beginning. Tomorrow we start shaping who you're meant to become." Jordan nodded, the warehouse suddenly feeling larger, as if the space itself understood the shift happening inside them. As they stepped outside, the night air greeted them with a coolness that made their skin prickle. The stars above shimmered faintly, scattered across the sky like reminders of how vast everything was beyond their own mind. Jordan exhaled slowly, watching the breath dissolve into the dark. For the first time in a long time, they felt the faintest spark of hope. Quiet, steady, waiting to grow. They whispered into the night, "I'm not done yet," and for the first time they believed it. Jordan woke the next morning feeling like the world had shifted slightly, not enough to be obvious, not enough to be comforting, but enough to remind them that something significant had begun inside their chest the night before. Their muscles were sore in a deep, interior way, as if the tension they'd carried for years had finally been confronted and now clung to the edges of their bones in protest. Their mind felt quieter than usual, not silent, but reshaped into something more spacious, more aware. The memory of sitting perfectly still for 10 minutes lingered like a bruise, raw, uncomfortable, but strangely empowering. Jordan sat up slowly, the blanket falling away, letting the cool air wake their senses. They moved toward the window and pulled the curtains aside. The early morning light was gentle, casting muted shades of gold across their room, illuminating the dust in the air in slow, floating patterns. Jordan stared at the quiet outside, cars moving lazily, a neighbor walking their dog, the distant hum of life resuming as if nothing in the universe had changed. But something had changed, not outside, inside. It was subtle, like a crack in a wall allowing new light to seep through. But it was there, undeniable. Jordan placed a hand on the cold window, grounding themselves in the moment. Their notebook sat on the bedside table, still open from the night before. Jordan sat on the edge of the bed and picked it up, feeling the familiar heaviness of it, a weight that was no longer intimidating but strangely comforting, like a witness to their internal battles. They flipped to a fresh page, hesitating as the empty lines stared back. Then slowly they began to write. "I survived yesterday," they wrote. I didn't expect that to matter, but it does. The pen moved with a steadiness they hadn't felt in a long time, gliding over the paper as thoughts poured out. They wrote about the fear, the tension, the 10 minutes that felt like a war zone inside their mind. They wrote about the noise, the panic, the unexpected calm. And then they wrote about Marcellus, his certainty, his intensity, his refusal to let Jordan hide behind excuses. By the time they finished the page, Jordan's hand was shaking slightly, but their breathing was steadier. The writing felt like a release, a clearing of mental debris. They closed the notebook gently, as if closing a door behind them. For a moment they sat quietly and listened to their heartbeat, the slow, persistent rhythm that reminded them they were still here, still trying. After a quick shower and a change of clothes, Jordan made coffee, though they barely tasted it, and grabbed their keys. The nervousness from the night before hadn't vanished, but it had changed shape. It wasn't panic anymore, it was anticipation, sharp and electric. As they drove to the warehouse, the sky grew brighter, watching them with a kind of silent expectation. Jordan wondered if their life had always been leading them back to this place, to this difficult and necessary journey they had once abandoned. When they reached the warehouse, it looked much the same, imposing, vast, indifferent. But Jordan didn't hesitate this time. They stepped inside and were immediately hit by the familiar coolness of the air, the stillness that felt almost sacred. Marcellus stood in the center again, waiting, arms behind his back, eyes fixed on Jordan with the same focused intensity as before. There were no greetings, no questions, no unnecessary words. Just a nod that acknowledged Jordan's choice to come back. "You slept," Marcellus said, though it was not a question. "A little," Jordan replied. "Better than before?" Jordan hesitated, then nodded. Marcellus's expression didn't soften, but something in his posture shifted, a subtle confirmation that progress had been noted. He moved toward one of the metal tables, retrieving an object Jordan didn't immediately recognize. When he turned around, they saw it clearly. A thick, worn leather strap, the edges frayed, the handle polished by years of use. Jordan's stomach tensed. "Today," Marcellus said, "we work on discipline." Jordan felt their pulse spike. "I thought yesterday was discipline," they muttered, with a weak attempt at humor. "Yesterday was stillness," Marcellus said flatly. "Different beast." He walked closer, letting the strap swing slightly from his hand. "You say you want to master your energy, your focus, your emotions. Good, then you must learn the first law of mastery, command over impulse." Jordan frowned slightly. "Impulse? The mind reacts," Marcellus said. "The body reacts. Fear reacts. You live your whole life in reaction. Today we break that." He gestured for Jordan to stand in front of him. They did, though their heart hammered uneasily. Marcellus lifted the strap slightly, not threateningly, but with purpose. "I will not hurt you," he said. "But I will test you. Your task is simple. Do not flinch." Jordan blinked, startled. "Do not what?" "Do not flinch," Marcellus repeated. He swung the strap lightly toward Jordan's shoulder. It tapped them with barely any force, but Jordan still flinched. The reaction was instinctive, rooted in years of tension. Marcellus's expression remained unreadable. "Again," he said. He lifted the strap and tapped again. Jordan flinched again. Their cheeks grew warm with embarrassment. "Why does this matter?" they asked. "Because you live like this," Marcellus said. "Every problem, every emotion, every criticism, you flinch, you brace, you retreat, you break your own focus the moment pressure appears." Jordan looked away. A part of them understood immediately. They had spent years reacting to everything: stress, fear, opinions, expectations, each reaction pulling them further from who they wanted to be. Marcellus lifted the strap again. "This time," he said, "breathe before I swing." Jordan inhaled slowly, letting the air settle in their chest. The strap came toward them. Jordan braced, but didn't move. They didn't flinch. Marcellus lowered the strap and gave a rare, almost imperceptible nod. Better. For the first time, Jordan felt something real shift inside them. A beginning, a spark, a reclaiming. Jordan's chest tightened as Marcellus lowered the strap, not out of fear, but from the sheer weight of realizing how deeply that single moment represented their entire life. The instinct to flinch, to recoil, to brace for damage. It was something they had done for years without noticing, with people, with responsibilities, with memories, with hope. Every time something came toward them, even if it wasn't meant to hurt, Jordan prepared for impact. And now, seeing it so clearly, they felt exposed in a way that made their throat burn. Marcellus paced slowly in front of them, the strap hanging loosely at his side. "Every reaction you've had in your life has cost you energy," he said. "Energy you didn't realize you were giving away." Jordan listened carefully, their breathing slow but uneven. Every time you flinch at a thought, or tense at a feeling, or shut down when things get difficult, you drain yourself. You think the world exhausts you, but the truth is, you exhaust you. The sentence struck Jordan with the force of truth they couldn't dodge. Their mind traveled to all the times they had collapsed under stress, spiraled into anxiety, or avoided decisions out of fear, moments where they told themselves they were overwhelmed. Yet it was their own internal storm, not the outside world, that drowned them. Marcellus stepped closer, lifting the strap again, but he didn't swing it this time. Instead, he pointed at Jordan's chest. "Your reactions dictate your reality. Control the reaction, and you control the life." Jordan exhaled, the concept terrifying in its simplicity. Marcellus took a step back and gestured toward a wide, empty space in the warehouse. "Follow me." Jordan did, their muscles still tense, though a strange calm had begun forming beneath the tension, like a second heartbeat. Marcellus pointed at the ground. "Stand here." Jordan positioned themselves where indicated. He then walked to a wall and picked up a heavy canvas bag filled with sand. The bag had rope handles on both sides, and judging from the strain in Marcellus's arm, it was far heavier than it looked. He dropped it at Jordan's feet. The impact echoed. "Lift it," Marcellus said. Jordan bent down, gripping the rough handles, feeling the abrasive texture scrape their palms. They lifted, and immediately their arms trembled. The weight dug into their shoulders, forcing their spine to engage, their core to tighten. "Hold it," Marcellus said. Jordan's breath strained as the bag tested their muscles. Their biceps burned, their wrists ached. After just a few seconds, instinct pushed them to put it down, but Marcellus's stare pinned them in place. "Don't drop it," he said. So Jordan gritted their teeth and held. Sweat formed along their temples as their arms shook violently. Their breathing grew harsh, echoing lightly through the warehouse. "This weight," Marcellus said, "is not here to break you. It's here to reveal you." Jordan blinked, sweat from their eyes straining against the heaviness. "Every responsibility you carry feels like this," Marcellus continued. "Every dream you chase, every problem you try to solve, every thought you refuse to let go. It all weighs something." Jordan's arms were on fire now. They could feel their muscles tearing and rebuilding all at once, like threads pulled to their limits. "Most people," Marcellus said, his voice calm despite Jordan's struggle, "carry their emotional weight like this all day, every day. They hold everything at once, unsure what to let go, unsure how to rest, unsure how to breathe. And then they wonder why they break." Jordan clenched their jaw, barely hanging on. "If you want to master yourself," Marcellus said, stepping closer, "you must learn to hold the weight without letting it crush you." Jordan inhaled shakily, tightening their grip even as their muscles screamed. "But more important," Marcellus added, "you must learn the moment when putting the weight down is a choice, not a collapse." Jordan's arms finally gave out. They lowered the sandbag, collapsing to their knees as the weight thudded to the floor. They breathed heavily, the ache in their arms radiating into their back and chest. Marcellus didn't scold them. He crouched beside them instead. "You didn't fail," he said. "You learned your limit." Jordan glanced up at him, barely managing a nod. Their body was shaking, but inside their mind something had settled. Something had clicked. "You push too hard in the wrong places," Marcellus said, "then give up too easily in the right ones." Jordan swallowed hard. The words cut deeply because they were true. They had spent years fighting battles that didn't matter and avoiding the ones that did. Marcellus stood and helped Jordan to their feet. "Come," he said, leading them toward the back of the warehouse. They stopped in front of a set of tall metal shelves stacked with boxes, notebooks, and old equipment. Marcellus pulled down a thick binder covered in dust. He placed it on a table and opened it. Inside were pages of diagrams, scribbles, and strategies. Years worth of notes, training methods, and philosophies. "This," Marcellus said, "is everything I've studied, tested, and broken myself to understand. Energy, focus, emotions, human behavior, discipline, willpower, structure." Jordan stared at the pages, overwhelmed by the depth and breadth of what they saw. "This," Marcellus said, tapping a page filled with overlapping circles, "is the foundation of self-mastery." Jordan leaned closer. The diagram showed 3 interconnected rings, one labeled energy, one labeled focus, and one labeled emotion. At the center, where all 3 overlapped, a single word was written: control. "Every person who fails," Marcellus said, "fails because these 3 things are misaligned." He pointed at the diagram again. "Your energy leaks in places you don't notice, your focus scatters, your emotions overpower you, and then you wonder why your life feels overwhelming." Jordan studied the diagram intensely, feeling a strange sense of recognition, as if the chaos inside them finally had a shape. Marcellus closed the binder. "Your training is not just physical. It's not just mental. It's not just emotional. It is the integration of all 3. Jordan felt a chill run down their spine, understanding that this was far more than a simple self-improvement journey. It was dismantling and rebuilding. "Tomorrow," Marcellus said, stepping back, "you begin learning how to align the 3. Jordan nodded slowly, the weight of the moment settling inside their chest like a deep, steady heartbeat. And somewhere beneath the exhaustion, they felt ready. Jordan lingered in front of the open binder long after Marcellus stepped away, their eyes tracing the lines of the diagram, the words scribbled in the margins, the layers of thought pressed into every page. It felt like looking at a map of a country they had lived in their whole life but never understood. Mountains of emotion, valleys of energy, rivers of focus, all tangled together in ways that explained the storms inside them. For the first time, Jordan realized that their chaos wasn't random. It had patterns, it had structure, it had roots. And if it had roots, maybe it could be pulled out, maybe it could be reshaped. They closed the binder gently, as if afraid the pages might crumble if touched too abruptly. Their arms still trembled from the weight of the sandbag, and their legs felt like they had been hollowed out. But inside their chest, a new heaviness had settled, purpose. Jordan straightened, letting a slow breath fill their lungs. They turned toward Marcellus, who stood near the far wall, adjusting equipment with a level of precision that looked almost ritualistic. Every movement he made carried intention, a silent demonstration of the discipline he preached. Jordan walked toward him. "Marcellus," they said quietly. He didn't turn. "What? What happens next?" Marcellus set down a coiled rope and finally faced them. His expression was unreadable as always, but there was something in his eyes, something sharper than judgment, softer than pride. "Next," he said, "you learn where your strength comes from, and where it doesn't." Jordan's brow furrowed. "I don't understand." Marcellus stepped closer. "You think strength is force. You think it's effort. You think it's pushing until you can't push anymore." Jordan didn't respond. A part of them feared the answer. But strength, Marcellus continued, comes from clarity. Jordan didn't know what to say. Marcellus gestured for them to follow and walked toward a large, empty section of the warehouse where a single wooden box stood. It was sturdy, worn from years of use, and tall enough to challenge anyone who approached it. "Step up," Marcellus said. Jordan climbed onto the box, their legs still shaky from the earlier exercises. "Stand tall," he said. Jordan did, though their balance wavered slightly. "Now look out," Marcellus continued. "What do you see?" Jordan scanned the warehouse from above. The floor below seemed more spacious from this height, the shadows less threatening, the walls less suffocating. "Everything looks different up here," Jordan said softly. Marcellus nodded once. "Perspective changes everything." He walked a few steps to the side. Most people live their lives from the ground, seeing problems in their faces, feeling trapped, overwhelmed, small. They forget they can rise. Jordan let the words sink in as they continued scanning the room from their elevated position. There was something almost symbolic about it, the idea of climbing above their struggles, even temporarily, to see more clearly. Marcellus continued, "You must learn to rise above your emotions, not ignore them, not suppress them, rise above them." Jordan felt the weight of that instruction. For years they had drowned in every emotion they felt. Fear, disappointment, shame, frustration, letting each one seep into their decisions until they could no longer tell what they truly wanted. Marcellus motioned for Jordan to step down. They did, landing softly on the concrete. "Now," he said, "we find your emotional triggers." Jordan stiffened. "Triggers?" "You can't master what you refuse to acknowledge," Marcellus said. He walked to a whiteboard hanging on the wall and handed Jordan a marker. "Write the 3 emotions that break you the easiest." Jordan stared at the marker, then at the empty board. Their mind raced. Which emotions controlled them? Which ones led their decisions? Which ones drained their energy until they had nothing left to give? After a long pause, Jordan wrote the first word, fear, then beneath it, shame, and finally overwhelm. Marcellus stepped beside them, studying the words. "Good," he said. "Now tell me what each one costs you." Jordan swallowed. Fear had cost them opportunities. Jobs they didn't apply for, people they didn't talk to, choices they didn't make. Shame had cost them self-worth, convincing them that mistakes were proof of their inadequacy. Overwhelm had cost them control, leaving them paralyzed when life demanded movement. They said all this aloud, voice shaking but steady enough to be heard. Marcellus listened without interrupting. When Jordan finished, he tapped the board lightly. "These emotions aren't your enemies," he said. "They're signals. Fear points to what matters. Shame points to what you care about. Overwhelm points to what you're ignoring." Jordan blinked, realizing they had never thought of emotions that way, not as antagonists to escape, but as messengers. Marcellus placed the marker back on the ledge. "Emotional control isn't about becoming numb," he said. "It's about understanding yourself so deeply that nothing surprises you." Jordan felt something open inside them, a space that had been locked for years. Elias appeared from the corner of the warehouse, as if he had been listening quietly the whole time. His presence always carried a strange serenity, a calming contrast to Marcellus's intensity. He approached slowly, his steps gentle but assured. "If you know your emotions," Elias said softly, "they lose their power to dictate your fate." Jordan turned toward him. Elias continued, "The person you were yesterday was ruled by emotion. The person you are becoming will rule emotion." Jordan felt their stomach tighten, not from fear, but from recognition. This was the truth they had been avoiding. Marcellus pointed toward the warehouse door. "That's enough for today," he said. "Rest. Tomorrow we continue with alignment." Jordan nodded, feeling the ache in their bones, the heaviness in their limbs, and beneath it all, the slow, steady rise of determination. They walked toward the door, each step grounding them, each breath deepening their resolve. When they stepped outside, the night air wrapped around them like a cool embrace. The sky was clearer than the night before, stars scattered across the darkness like tiny reminders that even in the vast unknown, meaning existed. Jordan closed their eyes for a moment, letting the air settle in their lungs. They whispered, "I can do this." And for the first time in their life, it didn't feel like a lie. Jordan woke the next morning with a heaviness that felt strangely purposeful, like the ache of a muscle that had finally been used for what it was made to do. Their arms still ached from holding the sandbag. Their shoulders pulsed with a deep soreness, and their mind felt stretched from confronting buried truths the day before. Yet beneath the fatigue was something steadier, an emerging clarity shaping itself slowly inside them. They sat up, rubbing their eyes, letting a faint glow from the rising sun spill across the room. It painted everything with a pale warmth that Jordan hadn't noticed in a long time. The dust floating through the air looked like tiny constellations. The silence didn't feel oppressive. For the first time, their room felt like a place where change was possible. Jordan reached for their notebook. The cover was already becoming worn from repeated use, scratched by fingernails, bent at the corners. They turned to a fresh page, letting the quiet settle over them like a blanket. Their hand hovered above the paper before finally writing, "I'm learning the difference between weight I must carry and weight I can choose to put down." The sentence felt heavier than ink. They wrote more. Thoughts about impulse, about fear's strange hold over them, about how perspective shifted when they stood on the wooden box yesterday. They wrote about shame and overwhelm, about the diagram in Marcellus's binder, about the 3 circles and what they represented. When they finished, Jordan closed the notebook softly, as if sealing away a small promise made to themselves. They got dressed, grabbed a quick drink of water, and drove toward the warehouse. The morning was brighter than before, the streets quietly alive, and Jordan felt an unfamiliar steadiness in their chest. Not confidence. Confidence was still far away, but something like stability. A growing root. A stronger heartbeat. Transformation wasn't a burst of light. It was a slow ignition. They could feel that now. When Jordan arrived at the warehouse, the door was slightly open, the dim interior glowing faintly under the dull overhead lights. They stepped inside, immediately met by the sharp, heavy stillness that always lived in that space. This time, both Marcellus and Elias were waiting. Elias sat on a wooden stool near the far wall, hands folded elegantly in his lap, while Marcellus stood with the firmness of a general preparing for battle. Their presence together made the air feel charged, like the start of a storm. As soon as Jordan approached, Marcellus spoke. "Today begins alignment." Jordan swallowed. "Alignment of what?" "Everything," Marcellus said. "Your thoughts, your actions, your breath, your intention." Elias nodded calmly. "What you learned so far were fragments, pieces of a larger system. Today, we begin weaving them." Jordan shifted their weight, feeling a twinge of nervous anticipation settle under their skin. Marcellus stepped closer. "Before we start," he said, "tell me what yesterday taught you." Jordan exhaled slowly and answered honestly. They told him about impulse, about flinching, about the weight of the sandbag, about feeling overwhelmed by responsibilities that weren't sorted or worth carrying. They told him about the wooden box and perspective, about the emotions written on the whiteboard and the meaning behind them. Marcellus listened without interrupting, though his eyes studied Jordan with dissecting precision. Elias watched as well, his expression warm but attentive, as if waiting for something deeper to reveal itself. When Jordan finished, Marcellus nodded slightly, acknowledging the effort. "Good," he said. "Now we build on it." He gestured toward an open space cleared in the center of the warehouse. "Stand there." Jordan walked into the center, their footsteps echoing softly. The concrete floor felt cool beneath their shoes, the air thick with expectation. Elias rose from the stool and approached quietly. He carried something in his hand, a small object wrapped in cloth. When he reached Jordan, he unfolded it, revealing a round, smooth stone, dark gray and cool to the touch. He placed it in Jordan's palm. "Hold this," Elias said. Jordan looked down. The stone had a weight to it, but not enough to strain the hand. "What does it represent?" Jordan asked. Elias stepped back. "Your center." Jordan watched him carefully, unsure what that meant. Elias continued, "Your center is the place inside you where energy, focus, and emotion meet. When your center is strong, your life aligns. When your center is weak, everything breaks under pressure." Marcellus added, "You've lived for years without a center. That ends today." Elias gestured toward the stone. "Close your hand around it." Jordan curled their fingers around the smooth surface, feeling the coolness seep into their skin. "Now close your eyes," Elias said. Jordan obeyed, their breath deepening instinctively as the world dimmed behind their eyelids. "Feel the weight," Elias said softly. "Feel how small it is, yet how solid." Jordan focused on the sensation. The stone wasn't heavy, but it grounded them in a strange way. Its presence felt symbolic, as if holding the stone meant holding something deeper than an object. "This," Elias said, "is where your strength will come from. Not the stone itself, but the stillness you build around it." Marcellus spoke next. "You will move today," he said, "but your center must remain steady, no matter what challenges come, no matter what emotions rise, no matter what I throw at you." Jordan's throat tightened slightly. The thought of being tested while holding on to something symbolic felt intimidating, but also important. Elias took a step back, his calm energy settling around Jordan like a whisper of reassurance. Marcellus, however, stepped forward with the presence of a coming storm. "Ready?" he asked. Jordan swallowed, fingers tight around the stone. "Yes." And with that single word, their next phase began. Jordan stood in the center of the warehouse, clutching the cool stone tightly in their palm, feeling its shape press into the skin of their fingers. The weight of it was symbolic, but the meaning behind it already pulsed inside their chest with startling clarity. Elias stepped back into the shadows while Marcellus circled Jordan slowly, his footsteps echoing across the concrete like a heartbeat amplified. Everything about his presence shifted, the calm firmness replaced with a sharper intensity, an energy that made the air feel dense. Jordan's breath deepened. They prepared themselves, though they weren't entirely sure what they were preparing for. "Your center," Marcellus began, "is more than calmness. It's more than discipline. It's where your power lies." He stopped behind Jordan. Most people live their lives outside of themselves, reacting, worrying, chasing, collapsing. Jordan listened carefully, feeling the truth of the words sink deeper than logic. "But when you stand in your center," Marcellus continued, "the world loses its ability to pull you apart." Without warning, Marcellus tapped Jordan's shoulder. Not hard, just enough to disrupt their balance. Jordan flinched and nearly dropped the stone. "Again," Marcellus said. He tapped the opposite shoulder. Jordan swayed. "Again," he repeated, tapping their back. Jordan stumbled forward. The stone nearly slipped from their grip, and a flash of frustration rippled through them. Marcellus stepped in front of Jordan. "What did I say?" Jordan's jaw tightened. "My center shouldn't break." "Correct," Marcellus said, "but you're letting your body react faster than your intention. Hold the center first, move second." He tapped Jordan's arm again. Jordan swayed but tightened their core, regaining balance. "Better," Marcellus said. He tapped the other arm again, slightly harder this time. Jordan managed to stay steady, though their breath shook. Marcellus's eyes sharpened with approval. He circled again, tapping, nudging, testing. Each time, Jordan reacted less to the hit and more to the intention of staying grounded. Their legs adjusted, their breath stabilized, their grip on the stone became firmer, not because of fear, but because of purpose. Elias's voice drifted across the room like calm wind. "Feel the movement around you," he said, "but do not become the movement." Jordan inhaled deeply. They understood. It wasn't about resisting force, it was about not letting the force dictate them. Marcellus suddenly pushed their shoulder harder, not enough to hurt, but enough to break their balance if they weren't prepared. Jordan staggered but didn't fall. They adjusted their footing, breath tight, chest steady. Marcellus smirked slightly, a rare expression of satisfaction. "Good. Again." Another push. Jordan resisted a tap to the back. Jordan held steady, a nudge to the chest. Jordan braced their core. The warehouse filled with the quiet rhythm of testing and stabilizing, pressure and resistance. Jordan didn't notice how much time had passed. They only noticed how different their body felt. More rooted, more connected, less reactive. Elias approached slowly, stopping a few feet from them. "Now," he said, "you will walk." Jordan blinked. "Walk?" "Yes," Elias replied calmly. "Walk around the warehouse while holding your center, every step a choice, not a reaction." Jordan nodded, adjusting their grip on the stone. They took their first step, slow, intentional, letting their breath meet the movement. The second step followed, smoother, quieter. Their awareness expanded outward. The space felt different now, as if each corner of the warehouse watched their progress. They walked in a wide arc, steps slow and even, body relaxed but alert. Marcellus walked beside them silently for a moment, observing the way Jordan moved. "You've lived your whole life walking like you're running from something," he said. "Today, walk like you are becoming something." Jordan felt a tremor run through them. Emotion or awakening, they couldn't tell. But they kept walking, letting the idea sink into their bones. When they reached the far end of the warehouse, Elias raised a hand. "Stop." Jordan halted, centering themselves. Elias approached. "Now breathe," he said. Jordan inhaled slowly, the air filling their chest in a deep, grounding wave. "Now close your eyes," Elias added. Jordan obeyed. "Where is your center?" Elias asked quietly. Jordan focused inward. They felt the weight of the stone, the pressure of the air against their skin, the rhythm of their breath. "Here," Jordan whispered, tapping their chest lightly with their free hand. "Yes," Elias said. "And what threatens it?" Jordan hesitated. "My thoughts," they said, "my emotions, fear, distraction." "Good," Elias said. "And what protects it?" Jordan opened their eyes slowly. "Intention." Elias nodded, stepping back. "You are learning." Marcellus suddenly clapped his hands loudly. The sound exploded through the warehouse like a crack of thunder. Jordan's body tensed, but they did not lose their center. They clenched the stone tighter and forced their breath to stay steady. Marcellus's eyes flashed with approval. "Better than expected." He walked around Jordan once more, his expression shifting into something more serious. "Now comes the real test," he said. "Movement with distraction." Jordan felt their pulse quicken. "Elias," Marcellus called. Elias stepped forward with surprising speed for a man of his age. He carried a long wooden staff and positioned himself across from Jordan. "You will step forward," Elias said, "and I will move around you. You will not chase my movement. You will not react to my pace. You will hold your center no matter what I do." Jordan tightened their grip on the stone. "Ready?" Elias asked. Jordan nodded. Elias began to circle them. the staff tapping lightly against the concrete in slow, rhythmic beats. Jordan followed instructions, keeping their breath firm, their intention strong, their balance steady. But Elias's movements grew unpredictable. He sped up, slowed down, drifted close, then far. Jordan felt the urge to turn fully toward him, to adjust their stance in reaction to him, but they resisted. Their center remained steady. Their focus remained inward. Their breath didn't break. For the first time, Jordan felt what true inner alignment might feel like, and it was powerful. Jordan continued standing in place as Elias circled them, the staff tapping the ground like a heartbeat that didn't belong to them. Each tap sent a small vibration up Jordan's spine, a reminder that the world outside their center was always moving, changing, shifting, testing. Yet for the first time, they did not feel pulled by it. They did not feel urged to adjust their position or react to every movement. Instead, their breath flowed with quiet precision, rising and falling in a rhythm that felt almost sacred. The stone in their hand had warmed from their grip, no longer cold, but carrying the heat of their determination. Sweat slid down the back of Jordan's neck, their legs quivering faintly from the strain of standing so still for so long, yet their center felt anchored, rooted, deeper than muscle or bone. Elias moved quicker now, the staff striking the concrete with greater force. Marcellus watched from several feet away, arms crossed, analyzing Jordan's every breath with unwavering intensity. Elias suddenly whipped the staff through the air, not to strike Jordan, but to disrupt the stillness around them. The sound sliced through the warehouse like a gust of wind. Jordan's shoulders tensed instinctively, but their balance held. Their mind shifted slightly, wavering but not breaking. They brought their breath back under control, tightening their core, grounding themselves in the intention they'd been building. Marcellus stepped forward. "Good," he said. "Now walk." Jordan hesitated, unsure if they heard correctly. "Walk," Marcellus repeated, "while Elias continues to move. Do not lose your center." Jordan took one step. The vibrations of Elias's staff struck the ground again, echoing toward them. Jordan kept walking, slow, deliberate steps across the warehouse floor, their fist wrapped around the stone so tightly their knuckles turned pale. Each step felt like a question. Are you grounded? Are you aligned? Can you move without collapsing inward? Elias glided around them as they walked, sometimes near, sometimes far, his staff tapping with unpredictable rhythm. Jordan could feel the pressure rising, the instinct to react, to look, to adjust to Elias's movement. But instead of giving in, they focused inward, letting their breath guide each step. Their heartbeat steadied, their shoulders lowered. Their mind felt strangely quiet. Marcellus watched closely. "This is the beginning of real mastery," he said. "Not control. Integration." Jordan understood now. Mastery wasn't about shutting the world out or forcing silence into their mind. It was about letting the world move while remaining unmoved in their purpose. It was about walking through chaos without letting chaos walk through them. Elias stopped suddenly, planting the staff firmly on the ground. "Now stop," he instructed. Jordan halted immediately, centering themselves. Again. Their chest rose and fell steadily. Their legs shook slightly, but their mind did not. Elias stepped closer, examining Jordan's expression. "Do you feel it?" he asked. Jordan nodded slowly. "Yes." "What?" Elias pressed gently. Jordan searched for the right words. "It feels like I'm inside myself," they said. "Not running, not hiding, not collapsing." Elias's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Then you are learning." Marcellus approached, his boots echoing across the concrete. He stopped only a few inches from Jordan. "This is alignment," he said, holding yourself through movement, through pressure, through distraction. Jordan met his gaze, feeling the weight of the moment settle into their bones. Marcellus looked at the stone in their hand. "Drop it," he said. Jordan froze. "Drop it?" "Yes," Marcellus repeated. "If it is truly inside you, you won't need the symbol anymore." Jordan slowly opened their fingers. The stone slipped from their grip, falling to the floor with a small, muted thud that echoed louder in their mind than in the warehouse. As soon as it left their palm, Jordan felt a strange rush of vulnerability, like a piece of them had been exposed. Their breath wavered, their fingers twitched. Marcellus tilted his head. "Center yourself." Jordan closed their eyes. At first, nothing happened. Their chest tightened. Their pulse quickened. Panic tugged at the edges of their mind. But then, slowly, deliberately, they inhaled. They felt the air move through them, felt their feet grounded against the floor, felt the familiar presence inside their chest, the same presence they had felt while holding the stone. It hadn't left. It had never been in the stone. It was inside them all along. Jordan opened their eyes. Their breathing was steady again, their posture aligned, their mind clear. Marcellus studied them with a slow, approving nod. "Good," he said. "You're beginning to understand what it means to hold yourself without relying on anything outside you." Elias stepped closer, his voice soft. "From this moment," he said, "your work deepens. Alignment is not something you achieve once. It is something you practice with every breath, every step, every choice." Jordan nodded, feeling the truth resonate inside them. They could sense a shift, subtle yet profound, like the ground beneath their life had finally steadied. Marcellus pointed toward the door. "Go home," he said. "Tomorrow we test your emotional resilience." Jordan turned toward the exit, exhaustion and strength mingling inside them in equal measure. As they stepped into the cool air outside, they felt something settle quietly in their chest, solid, unwavering. Their center was awakening, and they were ready for what came next. Jordan barely slept that night, not from panic, not from anxiety, not even from mental noise, but from the weight of what had awakened inside them at the warehouse. Their mind felt stretched open, like a door that had been locked for years had suddenly been unsealed. They lay in bed for hours, staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet hum of the night, feeling their heartbeat move with a steadier rhythm than they'd ever known. It wasn't calm exactly, it was awareness, a silent, humming presence inside them that didn't fade no matter how long they stared into the dark. When the morning finally came, Jordan rose slowly, their body sore from training, but their mind strangely alert, almost hungry. They walked barefoot across the cool floor, feeling the bite of cold on each step. Their reflection in the mirror surprised them, not because they looked better, but because they looked present. Their eyes no longer darted around in restless distraction. They held focus, depth, intention. Jordan touched the glass lightly, studying themselves the way a stranger might. There was no illusion that they were healed, no fantasy that they were suddenly strong, but there was a beginning forming, and beginnings mattered. They grabbed their notebook, sitting near the edge of the window where morning light spilled in softly. The sky outside was cloudy, tinged with muted blues and quiet grays. Jordan wrote without hesitation this time. "Yesterday I found my center, today I keep it." The simplicity of the sentence struck them. So much of their life had been complicated, lost in spirals, doubts, emotional storms, but this clarity felt like truth distilled. They added more lines. "Fear moves through me, not into me. Pressure tests me, not breaks me. I walk with my intention, not after it." Closing the notebook felt like closing a chapter of their old self. Jordan dressed and drove to the warehouse with a steadiness in their chest they didn't recognize. The drive felt shorter, the world less blurry, the air sharper. It was as if their senses, once drowned by internal noise, were finally becoming their own again. By the time they arrived, the warehouse door was already open, a faint, golden light spilling across the concrete floor like a silent invitation. Inside, Elias waited with the same serene stillness that made him appear carved from calm itself. Marcellus stood with his arms folded, a presence so grounded it made the air feel heavier. Today, something was different in the way they stood. Elias's posture was softer, his gaze thoughtful. Marcellus's stance, however, held a deeper gravity, as if the day's lesson carried far more weight than anything Jordan had faced so far. As Jordan approached, Marcellus spoke first. "Today," he said, "we dive into your emotional wilderness." Jordan felt their breath catch. They had expected intensity, but they hadn't expected this phrasing, emotional wilderness. The words alone carried a haunting honesty. Elias nodded. "Your emotions have guided your life like a storm without a horizon," he said quietly. "Today we give that storm a compass." Jordan swallowed, tension creeping up their spine. "What does that mean?" Elias stepped closer, hands behind his back. "It means," he said, "you will meet the emotions you've avoided, not by talking about them, not by writing them, by feeling them deliberately, cleanly, without letting them consume you." Jordan's pulse quickened. They had spent years running from the weight inside them, shame, anger, regret, fear, burying each one under overthinking and distraction. To face them directly felt like stepping into fire. Marcellus gestured toward the center of the warehouse, where a single mat lay on the floor. "Sit," he said. Jordan sat cross-legged on the mat, legs heavy, breathing shallow. Elias kneeled across from them while Marcellus remained standing behind. Elias spoke softly. "Close your eyes." Jordan obeyed, though the darkness behind their eyelids felt thick and unstable. "Now breathe," Elias said, slow, controlled, into your chest, into your center. Jordan inhaled. The air felt heavy going in, their lungs tight. "Good," Elias murmured. "Now, bring forward an emotion you run from." Jordan's stomach clenched. "Which one?" they whispered. "The first one that surfaces," Elias said. It came fast, faster than Jordan expected. "Regret." The word echoed through them like a blow. Their jaw tightened. Their fingers dug lightly into their knees. Elias sensed the shift. "Good," he said. "Now do not think about it. Feel it." Jordan tried, but almost immediately their mind began drowning them with memories. Every mistake, every abandoned opportunity, every moment they wished they could undo. Their chest tightened painfully. A tremor moved through their shoulders. Elias's voice cut through the chaos with gentle precision. "Not the story," he said calmly. "The feeling. Where does it sit in the body?" Jordan swallowed hard. Their hand moved instinctively to their sternum. "Here," they whispered. "It hurts." "That is the emotion," Elias said, "not the memory, the sensation." Jordan focused on the ache in their chest, the tight, hot pressure that made breathing difficult. For the first time, instead of running, they observed it. They sat with it. They allowed it. Elias guided them. Breathe into the sensation gently, not to push it away, but to understand it. Jordan inhaled deeply. The pressure didn't disappear, but it changed. It softened around the edges. It became less of an attack and more of a presence. Tears slipped down the sides of their face, not from panic, but from release. Elias leaned forward slightly. "Again," he whispered. "Breathe." Jordan breathed. Another tear fell. The emotion, regret, didn't crush them. It didn't drown them. It simply existed, and they existed with it. Marcellus finally spoke, his voice low, resonant. "Emotional power is not the absence of emotion," he said. It is the ability to feel without breaking. Jordan opened their eyes, slowly, blinking through tears. They nodded, wiping their face with the back of their hand. Elias sat back. "Good," he said gently. "You are ready for the next?" Jordan inhaled shakily, knowing this was only the beginning. Jordan wiped their cheeks, feeling the lingering warmth where tears had fallen, and for a moment the warehouse felt unbearably silent, as if the air itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what would surface next. Elias didn't move. Marcellus didn't speak. They simply allowed the stillness to stand around Jordan like a veil, letting the moment settle deep into their bones. It was unsettling, but also strangely grounding. Jordan's chest no longer felt like a cage. It felt like a chamber being opened piece by piece, letting old shadows crawl out into the light. "Close your eyes again," Elias said softly. His voice held no urgency, no force, only invitation. Jordan closed their eyes, feeling the remnants of emotion still vibrating under their ribs. "Now," Elias continued, "let the next emotion rise. Don't choose it. Let it choose you." Jordan inhaled slowly. The breath trembled. At first there was nothing, just the echo of the previous emotion still swirling faintly inside them. But then, from somewhere deeper, far beneath conscious thought, another feeling emerged, strong and visceral: anger. It surged up like heat from the earth, fierce and sudden, tightening Jordan's jaw before they could even register it. Marcellus stepped closer, sensing the shift even before Jordan spoke. "Good," he said, his tone like steel scraping stone. "Now feel it." Jordan's fists clenched on instinct. Their breath quickened. Anger wasn't new. Jordan had lived with it quietly for years, tucked beneath politeness, masked under fear, swallowed to avoid confrontation. But now, without stories attached, without excuses, the raw sensation itself rose inside them like a flame pressed against their ribs. Elias spoke through the tension. "Where does it sit?" Jordan touched their abdomen lightly, pressing a hand just above their stomach. "Here," they whispered. The area burned, hot, coiled, volatile. "Describe it," Elias said. Jordan swallowed. "It feels sharp, tight, like something trying to tear its way out." Elias nodded gently. "Do not fear it. Anger is a compass too. It shows you where you abandoned yourself." The words hit Jordan unexpectedly hard. Their throat tightened. Their posture stiffened. For years they had viewed anger as something shameful, an emotion to be suppressed, hidden, controlled at all costs. But the way Elias spoke about it, it felt like truth, reframed. Marcellus crouched down in front of them. His eyes were unyielding, sharp. "There is a difference," he said, "between anger that destroys and anger that reveals." Jordan lifted their gaze slightly. Marcellus continued, "When you suppress anger, you poison yourself. When you unleash it recklessly, you poison the world. But when you feel it cleanly," he tapped Jordan's chest lightly with 2 fingers, "you learn what you need." Jordan's breath grew shallower. The anger burned hotter now, spreading up their torso, climbing toward their throat. But instead of panicking, they followed Elias's earlier instruction, feeling the sensation itself. Not the story, not the memory, not the faces, not the mistakes, just the heat, the tension, the internal fire that had been waiting for acknowledgement. For a moment, Jordan felt like they might break open from the inside. A small choked sound escaped their throat. Their shoulders shook. And then, almost imperceptibly, the heat softened. It didn't disappear. It settled. It shifted from fire to warmth, from attack to clarity. Their muscles loosened, breath deepening. Elias watched closely. "What do you understand now?" Jordan opened their eyes slowly, their voice cracked, but the words were steady. I've been angry because I abandoned myself, because I let things happen to me, because I didn't speak, because I didn't act, because I stayed quiet when I should have fought. Marcellus nodded once, a rare sign of approval. Exactly. Anger is not the enemy. Avoidance is, Jordan nodded, letting the truth carve itself deeper into their consciousness. The warehouse felt different now. Not intimidating, not heavy, but honest. A space where truths weren't hidden behind politeness or excuses. A space where emotions could be felt without shame. Elias sat back on his heels. You've done well, he said. Now the last one. Jordan stiffened. Their palms grew damp. Elias continued, the one you fear most. Jordan's heart hammered. What emotion did they fear most? Shame, grief, loneliness? No. Beneath all of it, buried under years of survival and avoidance, was the one feeling Jordan had never been able to confront directly, not because it hurt too much, but because it meant too much. Fear. Not the fear they wrote on the whiteboard, not the rational fear of consequences or failure. No, this was a deeper fear, a primal fear, the fear of not being enough, the fear of being seen, the fear of disappointing everyone, the fear of trying and failing, the fear that their life would collapse the moment they stepped into it fully. Jordan felt the fear spread across their body like ice. Their hands trembled, their breath hitched. Elias saw the shift immediately. Good, he whispered, now stay. But staying with fear felt impossible. Jordan wanted to open their eyes. They wanted to stand up. They wanted to shut the feeling down, drown it, run from it. Their chest constricted violently, a tightness that made breathing feel like swallowing glass. Panic surged through them like a wave. Do not run, Elias said firmly, his tone sharper than before but still gentle at its core. Do not abandon yourself now. Jordan's breathing became erratic. Their fingers shook uncontrollably. Their mind screamed. The fear flooded them with images: failure, embarrassment, loss, disappointment, rejection, images that had lived in their subconscious for years, controlling them like invisible chains. Then Marcellus's voice cut through everything, deep, resonant, anchoring. Feel it. Don't run. You've run your entire life. Stay. Jordan felt tears spill again, but they didn't wipe them away. They leaned forward slightly, pressing a hand against the mat to anchor themselves. They inhaled sharply, the fear vibrating inside their nerves with unbearable intensity. Their voice cracked as they whispered, "It hurts." Elias nodded. "Yes, it always has, but this is the first time you are not turning away." Jordan breathed in again, a long, trembling inhale. Something inside them cracked. Not in a breaking way, but in a releasing way. The fear softened, not because it vanished, but because it was finally seen, finally acknowledged, finally faced. The ice inside them melted into a deep, trembling warmth. Jordan exhaled slowly. The breath didn't shake this time. They opened their eyes. Elias and Marcellus both stood before them, not as judges, not as teachers, but as witnesses to something rare, someone meeting their own fear without running. Marcellus nodded once. "Good, or," he said quietly, "you're finally awake." Jordan wiped their cheeks and breathed in the warehouse air, heavy with sweat, tears, and truth. This time the tears were not from fear. They were from recognition, recognition of who they were becoming, recognition of what they had survived, recognition of what they could be. Elias rose slowly. "Tomorrow," he said, "you will learn how to transform emotion into strength." Jordan closed their eyes again, not to escape, but to feel the echo of everything they just confronted. For the first time, they felt ready. Jordan remained seated on the mat long after Elias and Marcellus stepped back, their breath slowly returning to a steady rhythm. The warehouse felt vast around them, like a cathedral of silent echoes carrying every emotion they had just released into the air. The tears drying on their cheeks left faint trails of salt that tightened their skin, but there was an unmistakable lightness beneath the exhaustion, a rare clarity that felt almost sacred. For the first time in years, Jordan wasn't drowning in their emotions. They were standing inside them, not as a victim, but as a witness. Finally, Elias kneeled beside them again. This time he didn't instruct, didn't correct, didn't push. He simply rested a hand lightly on Jordan's shoulder, a gesture so gentle that it carried more weight than any command he had given so far. "You did something today most people never do," he said, voice soft enough to feel like sunlight in winter. "You allowed yourself to feel without collapsing." Jordan nodded weakly, wiping the last of their tears with the back of their hand. "It felt like dying," they whispered. Elias nodded. "It feels like dying because it is the death of a version of you that never knew how to stay." Those words sank deep. Jordan looked at the floor, processing the uncomfortable truth. For years, they had treated emotions like enemies, things to outrun or silence or bury. They never realized how deeply those buried emotions controlled them from the shadows. Marcellus stepped forward now, standing over Jordan with his arms crossed. His presence had changed. It wasn't softer, but it wasn't as sharp. It was grounded, firm, but recognizing. "Stand up," he said, not a command, an invitation. Jordan pushed themselves up slowly, feeling the fatigue of emotional exposure in every muscle. Their legs felt heavy, but steady. When they stood, they felt taller than when they arrived, not physically, internally. Something inside had elongated, expanded, straightened. Marcellus looked them over with a slow nod. "You faced the three," he said, "regret, anger, fear, the foundation of everything that held you back." Jordan met his eyes. "It was more than I expected." "It always is," Marcellus said. "People think strength comes from pushing harder, but true strength comes from seeing the parts of yourself that you've run from your entire life." Elias moved to stand beside him. "What you felt today," he said, "was the raw truth of your internal world. And truth, Jordan, is the gateway to transformation." Jordan swallowed, emotions swirling again, but this time not in chaos. They moved like waves washing over a shore, rhythmic and controlled. "What happens now?" they asked quietly. Elias stepped closer, clasping his hands behind his back. "Now that you have faced the emotions that dominated your life," he said, "you must learn how to convert them." Jordan frowned. "Convert them?" Marcellus nodded once. "Emotion is energy. Energy must move. You can channel it into destruction or into purpose." He leaned in slightly. "And tomorrow you learn how to turn your emotional storms into momentum." Jordan felt something stir inside their chest. Curiosity, nervousness, anticipation all blending together. "How?" Marcellus gestured at the mat. "Sit again." Jordan obeyed, lowering themselves back onto the mat. Elias joined them, sitting across with the same serene composure that made the entire room feel anchored. Marcellus walked around them in slow circles, his footsteps echoing like a pulse through the emptiness. "Your emotions are powerful," Elias said, "but they are not meant to control you. They are meant to inform you. When aligned with intention, emotion becomes fuel." Jordan furrowed their brow. "Fuel for what?" "For transformation," Marcellus said, "for discipline, for resilience, for creation, for becoming who you were meant to be before the world taught you to shrink." Jordan felt a soft tremor inside, recognition, hope, fear. "So, what do I do now?" Elias placed a hand gently over Jordan's chest. "Remember what you felt today. Regret, anger, fear. Each emotion carries a message. You must learn to interpret them." Marcellus added, Anger reveals your boundaries. Regret reveals your values. Fear reveals your desires. Jordan blinked, stunned. They had never heard emotions described in such a way. For years, they thought their feelings were obstacles, weaknesses, reminders of inadequacy. But now, they realized each one was a compass pointing towards something deeper. Elias tilted his head. You fear failure because you want success. You regret choices because you value integrity. You feel anger because you have been abandoning your own voice. Jordan inhaled sharply. The truths hit with painful precision, but also with liberation. Once you understand the message, Elias continued, the emotion no longer controls you. You control it. Marcellus stopped circling. He stood tall, exuding a presence that filled the entire room. That, he said, is emotional mastery. Jordan felt their chest swell with something unfamiliar. Empowerment. Not arrogance, not fantasy, just the quiet, grounded sense of capability. Elias rose, smoothing the fabric of his trousers. That is enough for today, he said softly. Your mind has opened enough wounds and revealed enough truths. Rest is part of integration. Jordan nodded, pushing themselves back to their feet. Their legs were shaky, but their steps were steady. They felt lighter but more solid, like the emotional storms inside them finally had sky to breathe in. As they walked toward the warehouse door, Marcellus called out one last time. Jordan, they turned. You didn't break today, he said. You returned. Jordan held his gaze, feeling the words settle like a weight that belonged. Then they stepped into the cool evening air. The sky overhead was quiet, almost tender. The breeze brushed against their skin like reassurance, and Jordan inhaled deeply, feeling a profound shift inside her. A widening, a clearing, a new kind of strength unfolding like a slow dawn. They looked up at the sky and whispered, I'm not afraid anymore. And for the first time, the world inside them felt honest. Jordan woke the next morning with a heaviness that felt strangely calm, like a sky thick with clouds but no storm. Their body was exhausted, not the kind of exhaustion that comes from sleepless nights or endless stress, but the deep cellular fatigue that follows true emotional work. Every muscle felt tender, every thought felt slower, and yet, beneath it all, something strong and clear hummed inside them like a new pulse. They sat up carefully, letting sunlight spill across their legs, warming the soreness. The room was quiet except for the faint hum of the radiator and the soft rustling of birds outside the window, and for once that quiet didn't intimidate them. It welcomed them, invited them. Jordan moved to the mirror, expecting to see the same tired eyes staring back, but something was different. Not the face, not the posture. Something deeper. Their reflection didn't look defeated. It looked awake in a way that frightened them and comforted them at the same time. It was the look of someone who could no longer pretend to be the same person they were yesterday. They touched the glass lightly and whispered, You survived yesterday. The words trembled but carried weight, truth, recognition. After a shower and a small breakfast that felt more grounding than usual, Jordan sat by the window with their notebook. The pages were filling quickly now, not with rambling thoughts or panicked lists, but with reflections. Raw, honest, precise. Today's entry began simply. I met myself yesterday and I didn't collapse. They wrote about regret, the ache in their chest, the heat of anger, the icy grip of fear. They wrote about feeling instead of fleeing, about how terrifying it was to sit inside the storm rather than hide from it. And then they wrote the truth that hit them hardest. I'm stronger than I knew. It stunned them, writing that. For so long they believed strength was something external. Discipline, productivity, willpower. But now they understood strength as something quieter, something internal. something that came from the willingness to see truth without running. Jordan closed the notebook gently, feeling a deeper sense of readiness settle into their bones. They grabbed their keys and stepped outside. The drive to the warehouse felt familiar now, but not in a repetitive way. More like traveling toward a place where a version of them waited each day to be uncovered. Morning sunlight glinted off the hood of the car, casting warm reflections across the street. Jordan tapped their fingers lightly against the steering wheel, not in anxiety, but in anticipation. It was strange how quickly the warehouse had become a place they needed, like a temple built for self-confrontation. When Jordan arrived, the warehouse door stood wide open, as if expecting them. Inside, the air was cooler than usual, carrying the faint scent of dust and metal. But today, something felt different. There were no tools laid out, no straps, no sandbags, no mats. Just an empty, open floor and a long wooden bench against the wall. Marcellus stood near the bench, arms crossed, eyes locked on Jordan with an intensity that held no aggression, only expectation. Elias sat quietly at the far end, his presence calm and grounding. As Jordan stepped inside, Marcellus spoke. "Today we enter the final phase of your training." Jordan swallowed. "Final phase?" Marcellus nodded. "You faced stillness. You faced your mind. You faced your center. You faced your emotions." Elias added softly, "Now you face the self beneath all of those." A chill moved through Jordan's spine. "What does that mean?" Marcellus gestured to the center of the warehouse. "Stand there." Jordan obeyed. The concrete beneath their feet felt cool, grounding, almost ceremonial. Marcellus stepped close enough for Jordan to feel the heat of his presence, but not close enough to touch. His voice dropped into something deep and resonant. "You've learned to control the noise. Now you must learn to listen to the quiet." Jordan frowned slightly. "I don't understand." Elias walked forward, hands clasped behind his back. "Every person has a self they present, a self they fear, and a self they hide. Your training so far has brought the first two to the surface." His eyes narrowed gently, compassionately. "Now we uncover the third." Jordan felt their breath catch. Something inside them shifted. Fear, anticipation, uncertainty. "How?" they whispered. Marcellus stepped back and nodded toward a simple wooden chair placed in the very center of the warehouse, something Jordan hadn't even noticed until now. The chair was unremarkable, old, worn, one leg slightly uneven, yet its presence felt strangely imposing. "Sit," Marcellus said. Jordan walked slowly to the chair and lowered themselves onto it. Elias and Marcellus moved to stand on opposite sides, not looming, not intimidating, but present. Guardians of the process, witnesses of what was about to unfold. Marcellus's voice softened in a way Jordan almost never heard. "This next phase is the hardest," he said, "because the self you hide is the self you fear will disappoint the world." Jordan felt their pulse quicken. Elias stepped closer. "Close your eyes," he instructed. Jordan obeyed. Darkness washed over them, warm but heavy. "Now listen," Elias whispered, "not to us, not to the world, to the voice beneath your thoughts." Jordan inhaled slowly, steadying their breath. The darkness behind their eyelids thickened, swirling in indistinct shapes. Their mind began drifting, searching, resisting. Marcellus said quietly, "The hidden self reveals itself only when you stop performing." Jordan's breath froze. They didn't move. They didn't speak. They waited, and deep inside something began to stir. Jordan sat in the chair, breathing slowly as the darkness behind their eyelids deepened into something almost physical. The warehouse around them faded away, the sounds muted, the cold air forgotten. It felt like descending into a place inside themselves that they had never dared to enter, quiet, vast, and unsettling. Their pulse throbbed faintly in their ears. Their fingers twitched slightly on their lap, but they remained still, listening, waiting, feeling. For a long moment, nothing happened. It was just breath, heartbeat, and silence. But then, slowly, something shifted. Not around them, but within. A faint whisper of thought, quieter than any fear or memory, rose from the depths of their consciousness. It didn't have words. It didn't have shape. It felt like presence. A part of Jordan they had ignored for years, maybe for their entire life. The presence felt fragile at first, like a small voice hidden under mountains of noise, but the longer Jordan breathed, the stronger it became. Elias's voice drifted into the stillness with careful precision. Don't chase it. Let it come. Jordan softened, allowing the strange presence inside them to move closer. Their mind resisted. Habit, conditioning, self-defense. But Jordan breathed through the resistance, staying open. The presence grew warmer, clearer, like a faint light flickering in a long hallway. It felt oddly familiar, like meeting someone they once knew but had forgotten. Marcellus spoke next, his tone firm but gentle. "What do you feel?" Jordan hesitated. They opened their mouth slightly, but no words came. Not because they didn't know, but because the feeling was too new, too raw, too unfiltered. They inhaled and whispered, "Something beneath everything." Elias nodded even though Jordan couldn't see it. "Good. Stay with it." The presence grew into an image, not vivid, not detailed, but symbolic. Jordan saw a version of themselves standing alone in a dim corridor, shoulders lowered, eyes tired, hands empty. Not weak, not broken, but waiting. Waiting for Jordan to return, waiting for acknowledgement, waiting to finally breathe. Jordan's breath caught in their throat. They recognized that version. It was the self they always kept hidden, the self who carried truth without performance or apology. The self beneath fear, beneath shame, beneath expectation. Their voice trembled as they whispered, "I see them." Elias's voice carried warmth. "Describe them." Jordan inhaled deeply. "They look like me," they said slowly, "but smaller. Not because they're weak, because they've been pushed down, ignored, silenced." Their chest tightened. They looked tired, like they've been waiting a long time for me to listen. Marcellus moved closer, the echo of his steps soft. "What do they want?" Jordan swallowed hard. The answer came before they could think. To be heard. A tear escaped despite their closed eyes. To be accepted. Another tear. To be allowed to exist. The warehouse remained silent except for Jordan's trembling breaths. Elias stepped closer until Jordan could sense his presence. "You've lived your entire life pretending this part of you doesn't matter," he said softly. "But this is your core self, the one beneath fear, beneath expectation, beneath performance. This is the self that doesn't need approval." Jordan felt their entire body tighten. The words struck something deep, something fragile. Elias continued gently, "Your hidden self is the part of you that wants to speak truths you've swallowed, that wants to choose things you never gave yourself permission to want, that wants to live without apologizing for existing." A sob escaped Jordan without warning. Their hand gripped the side of the chair. They had never been spoken to like this. They had never been given language for the part of themselves they buried to survive. Tears streamed freely now, dripping down their chin onto their shirt. Marcellus knelt in front of them. His voice lost all harshness. "Look at them," he said. "The real you. Not the one shaped by fear. Not the one shaped by other people's expectations, but the one who has been quietly trying to guide you your whole life." Jordan's breath stuttered. They whispered, I didn't know how to listen. That's why you're here, Marcellus replied, to remember who you were before the world taught you to hide. Jordan's hidden self, standing in that dim corridor inside their mind, began to lift their head. Their eyes, once downcast, met Jordan's with a quiet resilience that made Jordan's chest ache. Elias spoke again. Ask them what they need. Jordan inhaled shakily. Inside their mind, they asked the question silently. The answer came like a whisper rising from the floor of their soul. Stop abandoning me. Jordan's entire body trembled. Tears rushed down faster, their shoulders curled inward, their breath a shaky tide. They whispered aloud, "They want me to stop leaving them behind every time I'm scared, every time I doubt myself." Marcellus's voice was low. "And can you?" Jordan felt the pain, the yearning, the truth of it. They nodded slowly. "Yes." Their voice broke. "I want to." Elias reached out and gently placed a hand on Jordan's shoulder. "Then make a promise," he said softly. "A real one." Jordan inhaled deeply, centering themselves. Inside their mind, they stepped closer to the hidden self, the version of them that bore every abandoned dream, every silenced voice, every truth left unspoken. They knelt down in front of them. They reached out. And with their whole heart, Jordan whispered silently, "I won't leave you again." A warmth surged through Jordan's body, powerful, almost overwhelming. The hidden self straightened, lifted, rose from the shadows. Jordan's tears slowed, their breath steadied. Something inside them clicked into alignment as if two halves of their soul had finally locked together after years of separation. Elias whispered. "Good," Marcellus whispered. "Now the real transformation begins." Jordan opened their eyes. The world looked different, not because the warehouse had changed, but because they had. Jordan blinked slowly, their vision adjusting to the warehouse's dim light as they returned fully to the present. Their body felt heavier, grounded in a way that was almost unfamiliar. For so long, their sense of self had floated somewhere outside their reach, slipping through their fingers each time they tried to grasp it. But now, something had clicked, something subtle but monumental. It wasn't a dramatic transformation or a sudden surge of confidence. It was quieter, deeper, like discovering a pulse you didn't know you had. Elias observed Jordan with gentle eyes, studying the way they sat straighter, breathing with a steadier rhythm. "How do you feel?" he asked softly. Jordan searched for the words. They placed a hand on their chest. "Different," they whispered, like something fell into place that was missing. Marcellus nodded once. "Integration." He stepped back, giving Jordan space to rise. "You found the self you've been running from. Now comes the test of staying with that self when the world pushes back." Jordan stood slowly, the chair creaking underneath them. Their legs trembled, not from fear, but from the intensity of everything they had confronted in such a short time. They looked at their hands, slightly shaking, slightly warm, and realized the shaking wasn't weakness. It was activation, awareness. Elias approached with calm steps. "You met your hidden self," he said. "Now you must learn to move with them, not in front of them or behind them. Every time you shrink, you abandon them. Every time you pretend, you silence them." Jordan nodded, absorbing his words like ink sinking deeply into paper. "How do I keep them with me?" they asked. Elias smiled faintly. "By choosing truth over performance, by choosing alignment over approval, by choosing presence over panic." Marcellus gestured toward the center of the warehouse floor. And "Stand there," he said again. But this time, there was no tension in his voice. It was an invitation to a different task, one that required less fight and more vulnerability. Jordan stepped into the center. The familiar coldness of the concrete seeped through the soles of their shoes, but today the cold felt like grounding rather than intimidation. Elias and Marcellus stood on either side of them, forming a triangle of presence, support, and challenge. Elias spoke first. "Close your eyes." Jordan obeyed. "Now," Elias said softly, "call the hidden self forward again. Not as a shadow, not as a memory, but as part of your breath." Jordan inhaled deeply, and the presence rose again, not from the dark corridor of their mind this time, but from within their chest, warm, steady, alive. It felt strange, like welcoming home someone who had been waiting for years behind a locked door, but it also felt right. Marcellus spoke next, his voice low. "Now move." Jordan opened their eyes slowly. "Move how?" "Any way you want," Marcellus said, "but without losing the presence you just found." That instruction seemed simple, but Jordan immediately felt the difficulty of it. Movement meant expression. Expression meant vulnerability. Vulnerability meant potential judgment. And potential judgment had always been the trigger that caused Jordan to retreat into performance instead of authenticity. But they inhaled, feeling the presence inside them, and then they stepped forward, a slow, deliberate step, then another, then a shift of the shoulders, a turn of the head, a stretch of the arms. There was no choreography, no expectation, no correction from Marcellus or Elias, just movement, honest movement, guided not by fear or performance, but by the quiet signals of the hidden self now rising inside them. Elias watched with a soft smile. "Good," he murmured. "Keep breathing, keep choosing." Jordan felt tears gather again, but this time they didn't fall from pain. They fell from relief. Relief that they could move without hiding, breathe without shrinking, exist without apologizing. Marcellus's voice cut through the moment with unexpected warmth. "This," he said, "is what it means to be whole." Jordan froze, overwhelmed. Whole. The word felt too big, too new, too impossible. Elias stepped closer. "Wholeness doesn't mean perfection," he said. "It means you stopped leaving pieces of yourself behind." Jordan pressed a hand over their heart. For the first time in their life, they felt complete, not because they had fixed everything, but because they had finally stopped running. Marcellus nodded toward the door. "Go home," he said gently. "Tonight, sit with the self you found. Tomorrow, we turn wholeness into strength." Jordan walked out of the warehouse, the late afternoon sunlight catching on their skin. The world looked the same. Cars passing, wind rustling, sky stretching wide. But Jordan felt different in it. They breathed deeply, feeling the hidden self settle into place inside their chest like a long-lost heartbeat, returning home. For the first time in their life, Jordan whispered a truth that felt impossible only days ago. "I am here, all of me." And the world inside them finally answered back. Jordan stood just outside the warehouse door, the cool evening air brushing gently against their skin like a quiet reminder that the world outside had not changed, only their place within it. They inhaled slowly, letting the air sink deep into their lungs, and felt the subtle warmth in their chest where the hidden self had risen hours earlier. That warmth didn't fade now. It traveled with them, settling into the steady rhythm of their breath. They walked to their car feeling strangely anchored, as if gravity itself had shifted to help them remain present instead of drifting back into old patterns. The sun was low on the horizon, painting the sky in soft bands of pink and gold. Jordan opened the car door but didn't immediately sit. They stood there for a moment, resting an arm on the roof, letting the beauty in front of them settle into their awareness. It struck them how rare this feeling was. The ability to simply stand still without drowning in old fears, old thoughts, old storms. They whispered, "I'm here," not as a statement of existence, but as recognition. Presence. a kind of arrival they had never allowed themselves to experience fully. When they finally got into the car and began driving home, their mind didn't spiral the way it usually did after an intense emotional day. There was no scrambling for meaning, no over-analysis, no shame rising from the edges. Instead, every thought felt measured, grounded, as if passing through a new filter they hadn't possessed before. The hidden self, the one they promised not to abandon, seemed to sit quietly beside them, offering a sense of companionship that was both unfamiliar and profoundly comforting. At home, the air inside felt different too. Or perhaps Jordan walked inside differently, more connected to themselves, more aligned. They left the lights dim, letting the soft evening glow through the windows guide them. They placed their keys on the table, slipped off their shoes, and walked slowly to their room. Every step felt intentional, not rushed. Every breath felt honest. Jordan sat at the edge of their bed for a long moment, letting silence fill the space. They closed their eyes and pressed a hand against their chest. The warmth was still there. The presence was still there. The hidden self, the part of them they had neglected for years, was no longer buried, no longer silenced, no longer waiting at the edges of their awareness. It was here, awake, breathing with them. Without thinking, Jordan reached for their notebook. They opened to a fresh page and wrote, slowly, carefully, "I met my truth today." Another line followed, and I didn't walk away from it. Their handwriting trembled slightly, but not from fear, from fullness, from realization. They wrote more, about the corridor in their mind, about the version of themselves waiting in the dark, about kneeling in front of that self and promising not to abandon them again. They wrote about Elias's calm guidance and Marcellus's grounding commands. They wrote about integration, wholeness, presence, and then they wrote the truth they had never dared to articulate. I want to live as that self, not the one I pretend to be. Jordan closed the notebook and lay back on their bed, staring at the ceiling. The quiet felt different tonight. It wasn't empty, it wasn't threatening, it felt like a blank page waiting for intention. They drifted into sleep with surprising ease, the presence inside them resting like a warm ember. And for once their sleep was peaceful, not dreamless, but purposeful. They dreamed of walking down the same corridor where they once saw their hidden self waiting. Only this time the corridor was lit, and the hidden self wasn't small. They stood tall, steady, and whole. When Jordan reached them, they didn't kneel. They simply embraced them, merging into a single unified presence. When morning came, Jordan woke with a clarity unlike anything they had felt before. Their mind was quiet, their chest full, their breath deep. They sat up slowly, stretching their arms above their head, feeling the strength that had built quietly inside them. Today was not about survival, not about endurance, not about emotional excavation. Today was about transformation, the kind that came after truth, after integration, after meeting the self they had hidden for so long. Jordan stood, got dressed, and prepared for the final day of training. As they looked at themselves in the mirror, they spoke aloud, voice steady and grounded. I'm ready for whatever comes next. And this time, they truly meant it. Jordan arrived at the warehouse before either mentor had come into view. The early morning light spilled across the entrance in soft sheets, illuminating floating dust particles like tiny stars suspended in air. Jordan stepped inside slowly, breathing in the familiar mix of metal, wood, and quiet expectation. But today something felt unmistakably different. The warehouse no longer felt like a battleground. It felt like a threshold, the final doorway between who they once were and who they were becoming. Moments later, Elias emerged from the far corner, His calm presence moved like a tide across the room. When he reached Jordan, he gave a small nod, eyes warm with recognition. "You look different," he said quietly. Jordan smiled just barely. "I feel different." Marcellus entered from behind, his footsteps loud and unmistakable. He studied Jordan with the sharpness of someone who had seen every version of them, the fearful, the overwhelmed, the angry, the fragmented, and now stood before a version that carried the weight of integration. "Good," he said, "because today is not about breaking you." He paused. "It's about releasing you." Jordan's chest tightened with anticipation. "Releasing me?" Elias stepped closer. "Every part of your training has led to this: alignment, center, emotional mastery, truth." He gestured toward Jordan's heart. "You've met yourself. You've claimed yourself. Now you must live as yourself." Marcellus motioned for Jordan to follow. They walked to the center of the warehouse, the same place where Jordan had once trembled with fear, once struggled to stand, once learned to breathe, once confronted the shadows they carried. But today Jordan stood there without shrinking, without bracing, without apology. They stood with presence. Elias circled them slowly. "Your life until now has been a collection of reactions," he said. "Reactions to fear, to expectation, to doubt, to pain, to abandonment, to old wounds." Marcellus finished the thought with a quiet intensity. "But from this moment forward, your life becomes a collection of choices." Jordan felt a warmth rise inside them, subtle, steady, unmistakable, a sense of ownership they had never known. "What do I do?" they asked softly. Elias lifted a hand. "Close your eyes," Jordan obeyed. "Now breathe into your center," Elias said. "Feel the self you uncovered. Feel the truth you are." Jordan inhaled deeply, and the presence they had welcomed the day before rose again. Warm, steady, unafraid, it filled them like fire that burned without harming, a glow that expansion made visible only on the inside. Marcellus spoke next. "Today you commit, not to us, not to the training, not to a role, not to a future you can't predict." He stepped closer. "You commit to yourself." Jordan's breath trembled. A single tear slid down their cheek, not from pain, but from realization. Elias's voice softened. "Speak it," he whispered. "Promise yourself what you promised your hidden self." Jordan inhaled deeply. And in the quiet of the warehouse, with both mentors standing as witnesses, they whispered the words with unshaken conviction. "I will not abandon myself." The moment felt sacred, like something ancient had been restored. A homecoming, a coronation, a rebirth. Marcellus nodded slowly. Again, Jordan lifted their chin, voice stronger. "I will not abandon myself." Again. This time, the voice came from the deepest part of them, powerful and clear. "I will not abandon myself." The warehouse seemed to shift with the weight of it. Silence wrapped around them, thick and reverent. Elias placed a hand over Jordan's heart, the gesture gentle but grounding. "Then you are free." Jordan opened their eyes. Everything looked sharper, brighter, realer. The world no longer appeared as something to endure. It looked like something to enter fully. Marcellus stepped back with an approving nod. "Your training ends here," he said. "Now you begin the real work." Jordan frowned slightly. "What work?" "Life," Elias said simply. "But this time, you live it aligned." Jordan exhaled slowly, feeling a power in their chest they had never known. The hidden self, the once fractured part of them, no longer felt hidden. It felt integrated, alive. Marcellus walked toward the door and held it open. Light from the morning sun poured inside, illuminating Jordan in a warm, golden glow. "Go," he said. "Start the chapter only you can write." Jordan stepped toward the doorway. The sunlight hit their face, warm and full, and for the first time in their life, they didn't wonder whether they deserved it. They simply accepted it. They turned back to Elias and Marcellus one final time. "Thank you for helping me find myself." Elias bowed his head gently. Marcellus lifted his chin in acknowledgement, and then Jordan stepped out into the world, whole, aligned, awake, unbroken, finally living as the person they were always meant to be.